Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second day of this conference of ICEGOV. My name is Gideon Lichfield. I work for The Economist. I've worked in various roles, and right now my job is technology and society correspondent based in New York. I've spent a lot of time living in different countries, looking at how governments interact with citizens, usually not in the electronic way. So it's quite interesting for me to be here and to talk about some of the issues that are being discussed. I'm very pleased to be chairing this panel on international perspectives. I do have, however, a small complaint. Yesterday I put out a tweet saying that I was chairing this panel and invited people to submit questions for the panelists. I didn't get a single reply. Now, what would people say if The Economist published that at the ICEGOV conference nobody uses Twitter? It would be very embarrassing. So I expect by the end of this conference that you will all be tweeting. Maybe we can set the record for the most languages tweeted at a single event. It would be a great record to set. There are some 60 countries, I think, participating here, which is a very impressive number. The original plan was to have all 60 countries represented on the panel this morning, but there weren't enough microphones. So we have only 6, but it's a very diverse range of 6. And I think this diversity is a very good thing because we have Estonia, Slovenia, Colombia, Greece, Russia, and Palestine. People were asking me yesterday, why is this country in the panel? Why is that country in the panel? I think one of the reasons that e-governance is an interesting subject is that we have these terms that are very common, that we use across countries, but terms like interoperability and e-voting, e-participation, universal IDs, but these terms actually mean completely different things in every situation, in every context, just as every place speaks its own language. If you're a small country where, if you're a large country where, all the ministries have their own systems, then interoperability is a huge, huge headache. If you're a small country where half the ministries still keep their records on paper, then it's a much more tractable problem. If only 1/3 of your population uses the internet, then it means something very different to implement electronic IDs and something very different what you can do with them to if 80% of the population has internet access. These IDs have a completely different political context in different countries. In some countries, they're seen as an invasion of privacy. In others, people see the possibility of having a verifiable electronic ID as something like a basic human right, and they welcome it. In some places, putting certain transactions online is a way to reduce corruption. In other places, it's a way to reduce costs, and so the imperatives are very different. If you're in a country where more than half of the citizens actually live outside of the territory, then if you're dealing with a large diaspora like Palestine, for instance, then the issues of communicating with your people and offering them services changes radically from if most of them are inside the borders. If your population is dispersed over a very large area like Russia, then providing certain services in electronic form becomes much more crucial. And has a much greater impact maybe than if you're a very concentrated population. And as Artyom Yermolayev from the Moscow city government reminded us yesterday, it's one thing to provide e-ticketing if everybody is riding buses. It's another thing if some of them are riding camels. So I think it's very good that we have this diverse representation on the panel. Slovenia and Estonia are among the leaders in this part of Europe on the UN e-government rankings. Colombia is the leader in Latin America, but Colombia has a population of 45 million. Slovenia and Estonia have 1 or 2 million. Greece, as we will hear today, is using e-government to help it deal with a very specific situation, which is overcoming the economic crisis. Palestine is the only country that is not represented in the UN e-government rankings. Maybe with the vote that's happening in the UN now, by the time the next conference comes around, it will be in the rankings, inshallah. I'm going to start this discussion by offering each of the panelists time to say something about what is happening with e-governance in their own countries. Because we have 6 of them, we have an hour and a half for this discussion, and time is very limited. I'm going to ask them to each keep to 7 minutes for their first part of the presentation, and after that we'll have a panel discussion. Now, there isn't a timer, so I've taken my own e-initiative, and this is why we buy iPads, really. I am going to put this here, and everyone will know exactly how much time is remaining to them. And afterwards, they'll go back to the table, and we'll have a round-table discussion, and hopefully some time for questions. So I'm not going to read out their bios. The bios are all in the books. You know who they are. So I'm going to ask Maria Carolina Hoyos from Colombia to come up first. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm Maria Hoyos, and I represent the government of Colombia. And I want to start talking about our digital technology plan, that it was announced to Colombia and also to the world, if I can say that, last year when President Santos arrived to the presidency. So our main goal is reduce poverty, and we know that is a direct relationship between poverty and internet users. So we are right now, like in this part, with Brazil, Vietnam, and Mexico, and we pretend to move forward and increase the penetration of internet. As I said, the most important thing for us is to reduce poverty. So we have been increased in the penetration of mobile phones, computers, and internet, but we have to work better in fixed and in internet for fixed homes. For example, we're better in mobile phones, but in internet fixed, we have to work better. And we have right now a very interesting opportunity in the low strata levels. Right now, the high strata levels has more. The internet is it's a better penetration, and we're working. Vida Digital, our digital plan, is concentrated in the low part of the stratas. So what we want, first of all, we are focused in micro companies. Only the 7% of the micro companies in our country use internet. So right now we're working very hard to penetrate in the micro companies. And also our 5 basic principles in this digital plan is we have to make a partnership with the private sector, is a market as far as possible, the state as far as need. The second thing is that we have to encourage the supply and also the demand of digital services to reach a critical mass. We're working to reduce the tax and regulatory barriers, and we don't have a limited resource. So we're working hard to have focus in this invest. And the 5th principle base is that the government will give example. One of the most important things in this digital plan is to multiply by 4 the connections in internet in 4 years. So in 2010 we were 2.2 million of connections in internet, and we are working hard to target in 2014 8.8 connections to internet. This is our digital ecosystem. So and e-government, our program of e-government is in applications. We're working in infrastructure, in services, in applications, and in users. And I'm going to talk about the e-government program that is in the ecosystem in applications. Our general purpose with this strategy is that the government is at a click from the citizen. The online government is a strategy of national government, is very important for us, is led by the Ministry of ICTs in our country, and we pretend to be more efficient, transparent, and participate government. Our specific objectives is efficient and collaboration, to contribute to the transparency in public management, to promote citizens' participation, and also to raise competitiveness and improve quality of life of our citizens in Colombia. We are right now the leaders in America Latina. Our President Santos, this is a priority strategy for our president. Also, this strategy of e-government is in a law, so it has a very important result for all the purpose that we have, and also the national competitiveness policy is based in all this strategy of e-government. We are the first in the region and the 9th in the world of e-government. We are right now we have this plan has 5 different phases. First of all, the information, it was the first phase, the interaction, the transaction, the transformation, and democracy is the highest level. Right now we're working very hard. First of all, in the 4th level, in the national order, and right now we're working in interaction and transaction in the local entities in the different regions. We are right now with we increased since 2007 till 2011. The procedures were 73 procedures online, and right now we are like 700 procedures online in 2011. So finally, our goals is to have all the procedures of the state in the national order and also in the regional order online. We're working very hard in paperless, but also we're working very hard in the participation of the citizens. So we're making a very important campaign with all the social media to promote our plan of e-government in Colombia. This is yours? I don't know.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Maria Carolina Hoyos. I'll ask Pantelis Tzortzakis from Greece now to come and take the stage.
Good morning. We're experiencing a financial and international finances crisis, and Greece is in the middle of that crisis. Why that happens? It happens, I believe, due to not effective financial controls. This is the situation, and I'm a minister, but I'm not a political person. I'm just 2 months in the cabinet, and I used to be the CEO of the biggest Greek company. So the Prime Minister called me to come and help him to ratify the situation. So I just started 2 months ago, and I'm trying to understand and to see what procedure, what things we have to do in order to simplify things and to, from one side, to reduce cost, from the other side, to increase the productivity, and also at the same time to improve the experience of the end user. So I will start from the experience of the end user. I think the most important thing that we have to do in Greece is to unify the different registry that exists today in order to have a common e-identification for our citizen. Today, we do have around 4 registries, and there is not any interaction between the 4 registries. That creates a kind of mess that no IT system will work effectively in order to control the situation. So the first priority is to unify the 4 different registry systems. At the same time, we are going to move to a kind of 3-channel citizen approach. That means the citizen could interact with the government through a physical presence, through a kind of government store, as a physical presence for the people that they don't know or they could not use internet. We know that it will not be long because everybody now is moving to internet. But anyhow, the second and most important is the e-portal for having access through a single sign-on through one central portal to all the application and services that the government gives. And of course, through a call center. In order for these 3 different channels to be effective, we need to establish a kind of CRM that is going to interconnect the 3 different approaches and to be possible to track and to know what we are going to do. The second thing, which is also important, it has to do with productivity. How we are going to improve the productivity using a kind of government resource planning. In order for us, it's a big opportunity now that we make a decision that we are going to transform to IPSAS, which is the International Public Sector Accounting Standards. So with IPSAS, we are going to have much more transparency and at the same time a much more well-organized way on all the resource that has been invested, whatever is human capital or whatever is infrastructure. The third very important also aspect, it has to do with reducing cost. In order for us to reduce costs, we already have started to utilize the computerized e-prescription that gave us an immediate effect, which is reducing 36% the cost of the prescription. The main reason of that, it was that we insert the kind of clinical clinical protocols, and also that allows the doctor to be more effective, but on the other side, to reduce significantly the cost of the prescription. And that has, we just do it as a pilot to one health insurance organization, and the cost has been decreased 36% the first 6 months. At the same time, we move on e-auction on health, health procurement, and the result we got there, it was really amazing. We reduced the cost 1/6 of what the price used to be before. So we are taking all this parallel measure in order to reduce costs, which I think it's the most important thing that we are facing in Greece, because in Greece we do have a public sector which is large, but we have a private sector which is in a good shape. And also the individual people, they don't have a high level of borrowing. We do have a high level of borrowing as a country. So if you combine these two, I think the most important matters that we have to take is drastically reduce the cost of the government and the size of the government, and we are doing so, increase the productivity, and at the same time, we do all of this in order to give to our citizens a better experience and a better service through the e-government approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Not only is Mr. Tzortzakis reducing the cost and size of the government, he's reducing the cost and size of the session because he actually used 1 minute less than he had to. So congratulations. I'll ask Aleš Dobnikar from Slovenia now to come and take the podium.
Thank you, Gideon. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends. Well, governments now are facing with a very unpleasant situation, not just Slovenia, actually everywhere. And when we are talking about the e-government, where we are actually, what we are expected from the electronic government, I need to say that I'm not very familiar with this term, namely what is actually electronic government. We have the electronics, we have the governments, and definitely somehow means that it was also in the past that we have some expected to do to have the governments more flexible, more open, more transparent, modern, oriented to the citizens. And especially nowadays, especially it will be in the future, this crisis will not last just some months. Very probably it will last years. From the user perspective, I mean, not as a government, but as a citizen, which is actually the best government. I believe that the best is this which is somehow invisible for the people. That means that the government which is not bothering me with unpleasant services, tough paying for something, collecting data, and so on and so on. So definitely the modern government means that it is user-oriented. If you are looking now for the governmental perspective, we are again in the unpleasant situation. Why? Because if you are looking from services dealing for our users, we are, for example, not comparable with businesses, with the financial sector, and so on, because the governmental services are, we have actually a lot of services, first reason. Secondly, the people don't use it very frequently. And thirdly, it's typically very complex. So just to make these services electronically, it's not easy for the people, because first of all, they should to simplifying that. Definitely, the major role of the e-government is just to increase the take-up from our customers. How could we achieve that? First, these services could be mandatory. It's very easily. We could declare with an act or something like that, and citizens or businesses should use these services. It's very easy, but it's not pleasant to our customers. But secondly, we could just enable the services to our users with actually two basic goals. We could increase the take-up if these services could be easily to understand, easily to manage, and especially if our users will save some money, or better, both of them, if they could save time and money together. I just wish to express three actually basic issues which we are oriented on, or which are focusing not just in Slovenia, but actually everywhere. First is definitely that the further development should be oriented to the users, should be user-centricity approach. Secondly, the IT or the informatics is not then an obstacle for further development of the services. And thirdly, the interoperability is something not just at the technology level, but also at the national and also international, is one what should reduce the costs, reduce the simplifying the services and so on. But let's go step by step. What I mean with the user-oriented approach, it means that in the development of the new services, with the communication between the government on one side and users, that means citizens, businesses, and the other side, also the other countries, definitely the focus should be put on the users. Just one example. In Slovenia, we have the so-called electronic democracy portal. We established a service, and it was actually, a resolution was adopted in the parliament, that every law, every regulation initiated by a government should be put on the web in the initial stage, in the draft stage, for at least 1 month. So the interested parties, NGOs, trade unions, some other kind of organizations could make the proposals on that, suggestions, and so on. And according to that resolution adopted in the parliament, the governmental officials should respond to every suggestion within 15 days. That means actually that we are somehow in preparing, I mean, in between the initial stage and between the adoption of the parliament, that this communication with the people, with the interested parties could be done, and normally that the people have feeling that they have an influence on that. Secondly, if you're talking about processes and services, what I mentioned before, very often we said that electronic government is more about government than about electronic. It's true. Definitely in the development, in the beginning, we should simplify the process, change the law, change the mind of the people, of the governmental officials, and so on. And just later on, we put on that the IT, modern technologies, just to get appropriate synergies. And what I said before, the IT is not an obstacle in the development. And really, to get an appropriate synergy on that, definitely the major engagement has typically to be put into this preparatory on the content-based stage. Thirdly, interoperability. Shared services, reusable models, and so on, instead building of silos. Reduction of costs, efficiency, and so on was mentioned before. Definitely, this reduction of costs led us to use these reusable models, not just in the national level, but also in the international cross-border, because we know that the internet is somehow the first, or one of the major initiator for the globalization, and normally that e-government is also something which is very close to that. Coming to the end, as I said, the governments are facing now with a really tough financial, economic, fiscal situation. Definitely that electronic government is a part which could reduce the costs, to increase the effectiveness, efficiency, and to make the governments more collaborative with the people, more open, and that the people can feel that they have an influence to the further development of the society, not just normally to the government itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aleš. Thanks for that overview. Now Ruslan Gattarov from the Federation Council of Russia will come and speak.
Дорогие друзья, как вы поняли, я буду говорить на русском языке. Для некоторых это будет неожиданностью, но так как эта конференция проходит на 2 языках, я бы хотел, чтобы на этой конференции все-таки прозвучала русская речь. Вместе со мной здесь присутствуют мои коллеги Айрат Гаскаров, вице-президент Сбербанка России. Это организация, которая делает для нас универсальную электронную карту. И мой коллега Николай Сурков, депутат регионального парламента Новосибирской области, занимается вопросами IT. В России к теме электронного правительства большое внимание. Главная задача электронного правительства – это упростить, улучшить взаимоотношения гражданина и государства, сделать это общение удобным, комфортным, без стояния в очередях, уйти от коррупции, которая, к сожалению, у нас присутствует. И, безусловно, очень важно, чтобы граждане могли пользоваться всем комплексом государственных услуг вне зависимости, где они живут. В Москве, крупнейшем мегаполисе мира, или в небольшом селе где-нибудь на Дальнем Востоке. Одна из важнейших задач, которые мы уже сделали, это то, что мы сделали законодательную базу. Я сам законодатель, я являюсь членом Верхней Палаты Российского парламента, и мы много сделали в законодательном плане. Мы приняли базовый закон 210 ФЗ о электронных государственных услугах. Мы приняли федеральный закон об информации, информационных технологиях и защите информации и закон о доступе граждан к информации о деятельности государственных и муниципальных органов. Самые успешные проекты, наверное, в области электронного правительства — это 2008 год, подключение к интернету всех образовательных школ Российской Федерации. Это десятки тысяч школ, которые находятся во всех муниципалитетах. Это была огромная работа, были большие деньги, усилия, но мы это сделали. Во многих муниципалитетах интернет пришел в школу интернет пришел в муниципалитет только благодаря этой программе. Второе — это создание портала государственных услуг. Это единый портал, где собраны все государственные услуги, и любой гражданин может воспользоваться этим порталом. Там есть услуги просто информационного характера, а также уже есть онлайн-услуги, где вы можете получить в полном объеме услугу. Например, подача налоговой декларации, запись на техосмотр или, вот очень интересная для нас услуга, это получение загранпаспорта. Вот сейчас это занимает 30 дней. В 2012 году срок будет уменьшен в 10-15 раз, то есть будет 2-3 дня. Буквально вчера об этом сказал наш премьер Владимир Путин. Четвертый проект — это электронное правосудие. Это в интернет вывешиваются все решения судов, и гражданин может ознакомиться с ними. Сейчас это реализовано в большей части в арбитражном суде, в судах общей юрисдикции. В ближайшее время эти решения тоже будут сделаны. А следующий этап — это уже гражданин может получать решение суда в электронном виде, и оно будет юридически значимое. Для бизнеса это, безусловно, портал госзакупок. Это портал, где любой предприниматель может посмотреть, что государство покупает для себя, и поучаствовать в открытом конкурсе на общих основаниях. Открытость информации. Приоритеты для нас — это, конечно, ID. Я уже представил Айрата Гаскарова. Это наше государственное частное партнерство, крупнейший банк России Сбербанк и еще консорциум банков вместе с государством будут имитировать карту, универсальная электронная карта ID. И кроме двух обязательных приложений банковского и идентификации, там будут еще, на карту планируется разместить как коммерческие, так и государственные услуги регионального муниципального уровня, обеспечивающие получение гражданином услуг в сфере образования, здравоохранения, социальной сфере и многих других. Следующим приоритетом для нас является, конечно, Mobile ID. Это проникновение сотовой связи в России намного больше, чем интернета, может быть, даже это порядок. И поэтому Mobile ID один из важнейших приоритетов для того, чтобы гражданин мог воспользоваться электронным правительством. Также из приоритетов у нас перейти на облачную инфраструктуру и свободное программное обеспечение. Мы хотим перейти на программное обеспечение, не отягощенное лицензионными отчислениями. Здесь уже вчера об этом много говорили. Для нас это не просто экономическая мера, это еще и технологическая нейтральность и, если хотите, независимость технологическая. Трудности. Большая страна, 1/7 часть суши. Все вы видели Россию на карте мира. Большие проблемы с быстрым интернетом в глубинке. В далеких поселениях, где у нас живет 20, 30, 300, 100 человек. Но все они граждане нашей страны, и все они должны иметь равный доступ к государственным услугам, в том числе в онлайне. И государство сейчас вкладывает в это деньги. Бизнесу, к сожалению, это не интересно, и те схемы, которые реализованы, в том числе в Эстонии, к сожалению, пока у нас не работают. Мы очень надеемся на мобильный интернет. Каналы связи, я уже сказал, федеративное устройство. У нас есть государственные услуги, есть муниципальные услуги, есть региональные услуги. И все эти услуги при переходе в онлайн должны оплачиваться именно этими ведомствами. На государственном уровне оплачивает федерация, на региональном уровне оплачивает регион, на муниципальном муниципалитет. У нас очень большая разница. У нас есть Москва, Ханты-Мансийск, Ямало-Ненецкий федеральный округ, другие крупные богатые регионы, а есть бедные регионы. И вот здесь эту проблему мы будем решать дотациями, субсидиями и так далее. Уроки. Еще одна проблема – это готовность населения и, конечно, готовность чиновников. У нас многие чиновники никогда не видели компьютер, и как они будут предоставлять государственные услуги через интернет, никто не знает. По урокам. Безусловно, очень важно это управление проектом. Важно, чтобы был проектный подход. Если мы хотим достигнуть в большой стране результатов, наверное, по электронному правительству, так как это межведомственная координация и есть конкуренция между ведомствами, то обязательно должен быть проектный подход. Задача, ресурсы, команда, результат. Только так. Если это будет на общих основаниях, ничего это не заработает. Очень важный момент должен быть клуб IT-единомышленников. То есть это замы руководителей ведомств, замы руководителей регионов, замы руководителей муниципалитетов, ответственные за электронное правительство, которые должны, с одной стороны, участвовать в принятии решений и брать на себя возможность принимать решения, и в то же время они должны быть сторонниками информатизации электронного правительства, иначе ничего не получится. По зарубежному опыту очень коротко. Мне очень понравилась модель Ирландии, где гражданин поставлен в центр. И государственный орган воспринимается как магазин, да, а чиновник как продавец, который должен сделать так, чтобы гражданину удобно было купить ту или иную вещь, машину, одежду и так далее. Очень важно, чтобы чиновник вел именно себя так у нас в стране. Для нас это важно. А гражданин мог выбрать любую удобную услугу. И, безусловно, конечно, американский опыт открытых данных, Open Data, когда государство открывает свои информационные системы, а бизнес может из этого сделать продукты, на которых может заработать. В итоге, в России принята стратегия развития информационного общества, согласно которой мы ставим перед собой очень амбициозную задачу. Войти в 20-ку стран в мире по уровню развития информационного общества и электронного правительства. Спасибо за внимание.
Спасибо, Ruslan. Ruslan did go slightly over his time, but Russia's a big country. It takes the information longer to travel, so we'll forgive him. I'll ask Dr. Mashhour Abudaka from the Palestinian Authority to come and talk to us about the particular problems that Palestine faces and how they're dealing with them in e-government form. Thank you.
Good morning. Well, we are a small country and very disconnected, so maybe we'll have no time whatsoever. Well, first let me, before I forget, to thank the Estonian government for their help, since we've been working with them since 2005. And we've been thinking for a long time how to approach the e-government, since we never have a strong government. Now we have two governments, actually. And our communities are very disconnected, as I said. We are small communities. We don't have control over our destiny. Our international borders are not under our control. Our gateways are not under our control as well. So we need an e-government. So we looked at many examples around the world. So we thought that there is some innovation in Estonia, which allows every community to develop their own databases, and then we have to connect to each other easily and provide whatever services we can provide to our citizen. They helped us financially, and it was actually they paid the cost. And we went through the whole exercise, and at least now we know what we want to do. However, we've done a few things, but I'm not going to talk about all these details now. Maybe we'll leave it to the questioning time. Mentioning Palestine, you cannot avoid politics. Sorry about this, but we have to talk about our situation first. And it has been in the last week all over the place regarding the application to the United Nations, because we simply got fed up from the international community, especially the United States and Europe as well. Let me talk about our situation, internal situation regarding e-government. Education, we think that we have a very educated population. Literacy rate is very small. I think it's around 5%. We have education system pretty good compared with the area around us. It requires some development, especially in the lower schools. Universities are developing very fast and developing programs, all sorts of programs. Many of our students leave the country and get educated around in the region or internationally. The state of telecommunication is not a good one. Since Israel controlled the gateway, international gateway, controlled the frequency spectrum, we still cannot operate the 3G services. If you want to connect one area to another, say for example from Ramallah to Jericho, or from Ramallah to Nablus, or from Ramallah to Gaza, you have to go through the Israeli network. This is, even if you want to connect small villages, we have still to take a permission from the Israelis. Not all the time the Israelis allow us to connect to these small villages. This is why we have internet penetration, around 40–45% of our population are connected to broadband, fixed lines mostly of course. We don't have a broadband wireless, we don't have WiMAX. There are plenty of Wi-Fi's. If you go to around the cities, you'll find many wireless networks inside the cities, but not outside. We do have 2 mobile operators, but 2G only, and the competition is quite good. The penetration is high. We think it's around 90%, 90, maybe more than 90%. We have a black market Israeli mobile operator cover our area fully, since they think they have the right. Although under all the agreements they are not allowed to cover our area, but they say that they cover the settlements, which is beside the Palestinian towns. So they cover our area. So we have we have the black market. They don't pay license to us. They don't pay taxes, nothing whatsoever. We have one fixed line operator, still lagging behind. We didn't have a proper regulation for the fixed lines. Now there is a greater pressure on this operator to extend this network to small villages, which we are allowed to connect to them. Sometimes we are successful in upgrading the network, sometimes we are not. The biggest success story we can talk about that we connected most of the government institutions through fiber optics network, which is providing intergovernmental e-government work, which is good. Most of the government network are, I think, good, in a good shape. As far as you may have, maybe most of you predicted, that we are preoccupied by political issues rather than how to get e-government services to our citizens. All the citizen registry is in the hand of the Israelis. We do register our citizens, of course, but we have to inform the Israeli and update it all the time on a weekly basis. Birth certificates, death certificate, marriage, whatever, small things. We have to take the approval of the Israelis all the time. Some of them are crucial. People cannot leave the country or come into the country unless we do that. So when I listen to some of the country's problems, now I thought try ours. Greece in financial crisis. Oh, we've been always in financial crisis since birth, I think. Since UNRWA, which is the United Nations Refugee Agency, created, we've been in financial crisis. Russia is a big, vast country. We are small, but try discontinuity if you want, or occupation. It's another version. And then it's become really difficult. So the Palestinian e-government is a tough issue. We have managed to do a few things which is make life easier for us. And even in financial situation, we have half a dozen of international organizations auditing our accounts. So we have to be clearly very transparent and corruption-free 100%, not 99%, but 100% free corruption, so that we get the confidence of the international community. So e-government helps in this. Now the Ministry of Finance is fully digitized. Interministerial operations are fully digital. All financial transaction, most of it. The banking system is a success story. We have a very modern banking system, interact with the monetary fund, which is like the central bank doing very good job to control all financial transactions transparently, because it has to be transparent to the international community and to the Israeli as well, for obvious reason. Thank you. I hope on time. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. So finally, I will ask Mr. Juhan Parts to come and give a roundup. We've obviously there's a lot of Estonia being discussed at this conference. So Mr. Parts asked to speak in a more general terms, I think, summing up some of the issues that we've been covering.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for everybody, and good morning. I really trying to be maybe not too much on sharing the Estonian experience and initiatives, what is running in my country and what we are dreaming, but I really trying to make maybe some conclusion what I heard from my distinguished colleagues, and also some basic guidelines if we are talking about e-government as such, as a phenomenon. What is absolutely clear that we are living in the world that countries are different, and I think it was the best proof is that what we are listening now, but also there are also a lot of similarities. Each country has to develop e-government by its own. So I think this is something very important, very primitive, very similar, but it's totally clear that nobody else from the outside can complete this task. As I could notice from the statements from my colleagues, motivations behind the use of IT in government can be very different. As I heard, there is wish to build governments more effective, or to do bureaucracy more modern way. In some cases, the focus is social aspects. Sometimes is the cut costs to be more effective. But I think if we're coming for the team, international perspectives, I would like to point three moments, three aspects. And firstly, what is, I think, needed, and taking into account what is the conference is going on now, and on the flagship under the United Nations, that I think we have to clearly understand what e-government is as such, and we can ask maybe in the way that are there the full package if we're talking about e-government. And what are the major circumstances to get or to implement this full package for in your countries? And I think there is as we all know, there are more than 200 nation states, and they are very different political systems. But I think, and what we have to clearly fix that there are four important factors. I think to get the full package of e-government, you should have people who really believe to real democracy and strong civil society. I think if we don't have a real democracy, or we do not believe that civil society and the functioning, healthy civil society is best way how the people can organize the state or their common life, I think you never got the full package of e-government. The second point is saying that, of course, there are three, I think, important, the other important aspects, that there should be demand for the effective use of taxpayers' money. The second, the e-government should give full control over the political power to society. And the third, what is mostly discussed if I am participating in the different international forums, these the provide citizen-friendly services, you know. Less bureaucracy, less papers, and all that kind. So this is, I think, my first point is that I think on this umbrella, United Nations umbrella, we have to maybe be more talk about full package of e-government and what this really means. Doing that, this is of course giving us a better platform to understand and to define the possible cooperation, sharing the best practice, and etc. The second aspect is if you would want to have this e-government, you need certain kind of preconditions in your country. I think this is, I also here would like to fix three important issues. The first is the infrastructure. It is not the infrastructure only that you have access to internet, or nowadays certainly quality, quick, fast internet everywhere in your country, broadband, etc. But the e-government demand the certain specific infrastructure. And as you're mentioning, our president told yesterday, and I think if you're looking at the Estonian experience, I think there are two key elements of this specific e-government infrastructure. These two key elements are so-called X-road and electronic ID. I'm not going to detail to explain what they are, but I think these two pieces of infrastructure is crucial if we are elaborating this full package of e-government, what I described earlier. X-road and electronic identity. Without these, you will never succeed. It is not just argument for selling our products, but that is our understanding the current state of business. The second point, which I didn't hear, but I think we all live in the whatever country we are from, it is very, very important to look the legislation. Without legislative infrastructure, you can't be successful. The legislation should support two very important issues. One, really to put on the place certain principles, starting from the privacy protection, data protection, open access to the all data, and a lot of other principles which should be fixed to the law. I'm just always wondering then that then we are putting some court decisions or some other issues on the internet, the law drafts. I think there should be a rule, which is in the Estonian case, all, absolutely all public documents are open, everything. If there is no reason for state security or some other very clearly defined aspects. And these other principles, which should be fixed on the law and protected by the proper institutions. And the second, which is very important, is of course doing whatever services, whatever registers, whatever, you have to rewrite your existing legislation. Because using new, more modern technology to do any kind of services, you certainly need to tackle the current bureaucratic procedures. You have to reorganize the normal work of the ministries, local governments, etc. And the third very important issue you have to replace is really the skilled people. The public should be used, the public should be educated on the minimum level. You know. It is, without that, you know, you are just creating like toys or something which doesn't work. You know. Because in the Estonian case, there is a public demand that everything should be done according to principles of e-government. I just can't pay a politician or minister responsible for that because there is so very clear public demand, or everybody. You're going to the villages, you're going to the smaller cities, you're going to meet pensioners, students, everybody is demanding normal service, which is currently the e-government. I know my time is over, but I'm coming to the third point, which is, I think, very, very important, is the question, and I think this is the future question, that how we live in a globalized world. There are more movement of people, capital, goods, information, etc. What do we have to do to building this e-government infrastructure that the governments can really, the borders are really not borders, but that all these e-governments support these global objective processes. And this saying that, of course, we are very, very beginning in the world, but of course, as we are in the member of European Union, and the biggest achievement of European Union is not euro. The biggest achievement of European Union is the single market. And for example, now in the European Union, the biggest challenge is how to make the single market functioning according to what internet and digital technology offer. And here is, I think, the biggest challenge for European Union is, if you're talking about these international perspectives, government cooperation between governments, how can I really make all these things work internationally, not just on the country scene. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parts, for that, I think, very interesting overview of the main issues that are required. A few common issues came for me out of that discussion, and I thought I might throw a couple of questions up to discuss among the panel. The first thing was something that Aleš Dobnikar said, which struck me. You said that the best government for the citizen is one that is invisible. I'd like to discuss that. Is that true? Because on one hand, I would say yes. Part of the purpose of e-government is to reduce the friction of the interaction, to make it smoother, so that when you have to do something with the government, it is done in the minimum time possible. On the other hand, surely one of the purposes of e-government is also to make the citizen take a more active role in the government, to interact with it more for shorter periods, but to have more interactions, to be more participatory, to see the government not as something to avoid, but something that you actually want to influence. So, invisible or more visible? Any opinions from the panel on this question? Dr. Abudaka.
Well, maybe yes, in developed economies, and when government try to dominate its citizen, especially nowadays when everything controlled by security, and under security everything is covered. That's maybe the case, but in area like ours, like in our situation, not in the areas, just in our situation, the government already invisible or is not relevant most of the time, and trying to be visible that we are doing something, and especially in the time that we still haven't gained our full independence. Generally, yes, I would agree with this statement. Government should not really dominate. Government should disappear or try to be not in the scene at all. Active citizen will replace good government.
Aleš, you want to come back on this one?
Yeah, maybe. Very shortly, when I'm talking about the invisibility of the government, I have in mind that I'm talking about the services actually. So the governmental services should not bothering neither the companies, neither the citizens with unpleasant steps, unnecessary steps. So that this reduction of administrative burdens is definitely very, very important. But on the other hand, sure, the government should be very visible. When I'm talking about this so-called, we are talking about electronic democracy, something dealing with the democracy. It's very crucial that people have feeling that they could communicate very open through different communication channels, not just over the internet and so on, emails, TVs and so on, and that this communication is transparent and open. That means that they couldn't just get the information from the government, they could also suggest to the government, and they could see what's going on with these suggestions. So especially nowadays, I think that because all the governments, as I said, facing with some kind of troubles, mainly with the budget. Consequently, some reforms are necessary. The basic question is there, are the governments ready to use these modern technologies, including the IT, internet, and so on, that they explain and communicate with the opposite side, actually, with the citizens and so on, and to explain them why some reforms are necessary and so on. So that means both are necessary, visible from the services perspective, and also invisible and visibility during the communication with the citizens, businesses, other countries, and so on.
Right. Okay. So another question that comes up: how do you measure the effectiveness of the measures that you're taking, the e-government initiatives that you take? Because it's very easy to measure, the number of connections that you make, the number of services that you put online, the number of laws that are made available in draft form. In the paper that Meelis Kitsing gave yesterday about e-participation in Estonia, he made the interesting point that there is a portal where laws are put up by ministries for viewing by the public in draft form, but the interaction rate was very low. And it's one of the annoying things about the internet is that a discussion doesn't necessarily take place where you want it to take place. People are probably discussing these laws, but they may be doing it on other forums which are not the government forums. And reaching those people can be harder, and so also measuring the impact of the e-government things that you do can be more difficult. So can any of you talk about experiences that you've had in measuring effectiveness of e-government initiatives?
Yes. I think that we have to always look, as I understand your question correctly, maybe to split on two different government initiatives. One of them are really, provide different services, different functions for the public, and you can measure, and you have to measure as you measure all the public functions. You have to look how much you spend money for certain functions earlier, and certainly to do any service using now the new technology, changing laws, changing maybe some how to provide services, you certainly have to look the economy behind these investment, because this should be investment. The other point is that you bring example that you put the laws or drafts in the internet, and this is some kind of, as I told, as a basis for supporting democracy, civil society, and etc. I am not totally concerned that nobody is reading sometimes these boring drafts, you know. But I am fully sure that if there is a principle that all these legislative drafts and everything is in as easily available for public, this is a kind of function of how to control the political power, which is just guaranteeing the basic principles of democracy. You know. You can't measure that, you know, so much in economical terms.
Ruslan, you wanted to come in. Oh, sorry, Dr. Abudaka, and then Ruslan Gattarov.
Well, I think e-government laws always published, laws always in public domain. Every country, democratic country, they publish their own laws in official magazine and they put in the libraries. It's only e-government make access to citizens. These laws are easy. But we should not really overtaken by e-government when everything is digitized and e-government is be used to control its own citizen. We have noticed in countries in our region, for example, which is going through the Arab Spring, that internet and mobile operator has been suspended when it does not suit government. In Europe, even in London riots, there were talk about suspension of Facebook. Even, look, when government don't like networks and they don't like how citizens interact with each other, they have tendency to suspend such networks. I think what we need, we have to put a stock and redefine e-government and who controls it and who owns it. And that is the, okay, providing citizen, okay, now every citizen has to go and get a passport in no time. But if you want to use e-government for e-democracy, who defines e-democracy?
Okay, thank you.
You think there can be difference e-democracy and real democracy? Could you imagine that in situation of real democracy you can prohibit the use of internet?
Well, it's already happening actually, and you could see it. I'm not really advocating chaos, of course, because society has to be controlled. But from the what's happening in our region, for example, and I think it's going through rapid change and radical change as well. When e-democracy is applied to armchair democracy, it's fine, it's okay. And this is not translating in changing government and changing system as a whole. But when people come and organize themselves in public demonstration, blocking roads and changing government and changing all the way the system has been governed, then okay, suspend everything. And this is what happens in Egypt, in Tunisia, and you saw the result of these things. Even in London, they will talk about it, and maybe it was reported in the press during the riot. Well, this is chaotic. I'm not really advocating it. But even the thought about suspension of networks.
Right, except that in London, as soon as the government...
Очень интересная дискуссия пошла. Вот когда коллеги говорят, прошу прощения, когда коллеги говорят о том, что ограничить демократию там в арабских странах это плохо, а когда происходили события в Лондоне и британское правительство хотело выключить интернет в Лондоне, тогда это можно. То есть двойные стандарты.
Отели они выключат. Я первый раз слышу, что
Кэмерон... Эти разговоры были.
He's still in power?
Подождите, пожалуйста, минуточку. One of the things that happened in London is that as soon as there was a proposal from people in the government to close down the social media, everybody reacted. It wasn't really a practical possibility.
Whom proposal this was?
The police.
Police or some kind of, you know...
It was a public official, I don't even remember who now. It was a public official.
It was a police officer.
The point is that it was not possible. It's one thing for that to happen in a democracy.
But you know what, they refused to do that? Because they know the government, they will pay money for the mobile operator. Because they have to pay a compensation for doing that.
Sorry, say that again.
The government knew that they will pay money for the mobile operators to suspend networks in certain areas. And this is what made the minister think that we don't have money to pay the mobile operators. I don't know how many millions.
So you think
so let the London burn, it doesn't matter as long as... Yeah, but look, and I'm not advocating this. Just we need to redefine e-government and e-democracy. This is need redefinition. Who owns e-government? Is it the government or the citizen? That's
Who
what
owns it?
Who owns it?
In what sense owns?
What does mean?
No, you need to put.
Kind of rhetorical question, you know.
Well, I will govern. Who owns it? Like, it's fine. Put laws to govern, for example, these issues. And it's an evolving thing. It's not really, we don't know about these things until they happen, by the way. On what time you could suspend this or do this for common good? What time I could do that and I cannot do this? Okay? This is control the minister. Well, I'm happy to control it, to stop everything when I don't like it. But it has to be controlled by laws, which everybody is accountable. Like what's happened in Egypt. Is now the president is to be paid for the suspension of network. I don't know how many billion. Personal. And the ministers as well, because they ordered the suspension of the network. This costs money as well.
I'm going to give Ruslan the last word on this particular question, and then we'll move on to another one.
Ну, я немножко про другое. Вот мы для себя выработали такое, что есть электронное правительство, а есть электронное государство. Для нас оно состоит из трех частей. Электронное правительство, электронный парламент и электронное правосудие. И принадлежит оно, конечно, гражданам. И сделано оно должно быть для граждан. Я согласен с термином, что все, что открыто, все, что не закрыто, должно быть открыто для граждан. Все. Кроме специальной информации, которой, на мой взгляд, должно быть очень мало. Электронный парламент – это возможность людей участвовать в принятии решений на федеральном, региональном, муниципальном уровне. Причем не просто чат, мы сейчас ведем работу, не просто чат, комментарии, плохо и хорошо, этот плохой, этот хороший. Нет. То есть мы хотим сделать систему краудсорсинга в российском парламенте. То есть чтобы граждане, эксперты принимали участие в создании законов. Не в обсуждении их, не только в обсуждении, а в создании законов. Это наша цель. Это то, что у нас поддерживает президент Дмитрий Медведев. Это то, что поддерживают обе палаты российского парламента. И мы в 2012 году заложили деньги на это. Модернизируем наш российский портал, и он начнет работать. Это называется прямая демократия. Это называется электронная демократия. И если говорить, как изменит мир электронное правительство, электронное государство, да, где-то наша задача в России сделать лицо государства приветливым, комфортным, очень удобным для общения с гражданином. Сейчас оно, к сожалению, не такое приветливое, очень часто грубое и такое страшное лицо нашего чиновника. Мы хотим изменить это и убрать чиновника от взаимоотношений с гражданином, заменив его электронным правительством. Для нас это важно. Спасибо.
Thank you. Did you want to come in, Dr. Tzortzakis? Yes.
Yeah, just to say that in order to, the e-democracy really moves us faster to what democracy used to be. So if we see from where the democracy starts and where it happens, it was in the ancient Athens that the people was in the market, they were discussing, it was everything public, and through that discussion the law it was making, and the judges and all this kind of thing. But that was happened at that time because it was just a small city with very few citizens. Now that the countries and the governments have started to be with over 1 million of people, that it's not possible to happen as it used to be. So the e-democracy and the e-government, what it does, it gives the empowerment to the end user to participate and to change the way that the law is drafting, to change the way that the justice is given, and all those kind of things. So what I think is that the e-government, it's nothing new. It's just a return for where the democracy starts.
Okay. Well, so we've gone in a few different directions with this little discussion. I think maybe the way that I would summarize it is that there is e-democracy and there is e-services, if you like, that side of government. The e-services side, as Aleš said, needs to be as invisible as possible and to be as smooth as possible for the citizen. The democracy side, the citizen participation, the influence on government needs to involve people more. And I think maybe to come to Dr. Abudaka's question about this, the more that you provide e-government services, the more that you digitize the business of government, if you're following the principles that Mr. Pats was talking about, the basics that a country requires in order for these services to be effective, then necessarily I think you also create the infrastructure and the culture for e-democracy, which is that it's much harder for the government to repress social media or other media. It's much more natural for the citizens to participate. So I think the two probably go hand in hand. We are sort of out of time, but I've been told I can have a couple more minutes. So are there any questions from the audience?
Sorry to disturb you. I still remember your question is how to measure the effectiveness of e-government. So from my point of view, I would like to hear such discussion is divide into the normal and the abnormal case. Normal case should measure the services and functions provided by the government and also see if can monitor and help the politicians. That's the normal case. My point more on the second, abnormal case, when some disaster happened, whether the e-government system can efficiently help to recover the economy and save the life. So I prefer discussing like this way. I don't know why it goes to the democracy also.
Thank you for reminding me what I actually asked. Yes. And it's a good way to put the question. When there is a crisis, whether it's a financial crisis or a natural disaster, something else, how do you measure the extent to which e-government has helped to solve it? Are there any examples that you can think of on the panel? Long silences. Yes, Aleš.
Maybe I just can explain one example which has happened in Slovenia years ago, but mainly dealing with the efficiency and of the services. It's not related with the crisis itself, but nevertheless. In Slovenia, we introduced the income taxes in electronic form in the year 2003. In that time, we should fulfill the form in classical base form and just the same in the electronic form, 4 pages. You should put there all your salaries, information from the banks, and so on and so on. Very tough work. Our director of the tax administration that time said that we are somehow following this Central European approach. It means this fulfilling of the data by the citizens. It was bothering, definitely. Every year I spent at least 3 papers because I made some mistakes somewhere. In that time we introduced also the electronic fulfillment of these income taxes. And the first year, 2003, 2.5% of the people fulfilled this form in the electronic form. Next year maybe 4%, next year 6%, actually nothing. But just later on, what was happened? Our Minister of Finance changed the procedures. We are moving now from the Central European, German-oriented approach to more Scandinavian, they said, experts from the tax administrations. And the tax administration just sent every year how much you should pay or how much you should get back. Anything else, that's all. And if you agree, and 95% of the people agree, they just pay in the proper time or just they get money back. This is the really efficiency, increasing of the efficiency. No paper, no 2 separate channels for doing that. No bothering the people, keeping all of these papers or either in the electronic form and so on. That means what I said before. It's nothing actually to dealing with the IT infrastructure. Also in 2003, we have the digital certificates for identity proof. Normally all of this personal protection data and so on was regarding and corrected, adopted according to the Act and so on and so on. But the change of the procedure really minimized the cost for everybody, for the people and for the tax administration itself. So that's actually this simplification of the procedures is the crucial point here.
Okay, so unless you call taxes a crisis, which some people do, then it's not an example of a crisis, but it's a useful lesson. The procedures are just as important as technology. Are there any other? Yes.
Thank you. У меня вопрос к господину Руслану Гаттарову. Я уверен, что под американским опытом открытых данных мы не имели в виду Wikileaks. Я хочу спросить, есть ли какие-то конкретные намеченные планы у Российской Федерации по этому проекту открытых данных?
Да, совсем недавно состоялось заседание президиума президентского совета по развитию информационного общества. Как раз обсуждался этот вопрос, и госпожа Набиуллина, министр экономического развития Российской Федерации, очень четко встала на позицию того, что государство откроет данные, которые не закрыты, и предоставит возможность бизнесу сделать из этого продукт, коммерческий продукт. Просто были предложения со стороны разных ведомств самим, чтобы государство должно сделать эти продукты, и эта работа будет вестись уже, наверное, все-таки со следующего года достаточно активно.
Спасибо. One last question over here.
Thank you. Tiit Vapper, Real Systems. I have a more practical question, actually. As I had business relationships in all of the countries actually represented here in the board, except Colombia, in development of e-governance and software. And I'd rather like to ask, as countries are very different of the level of development of e-governance, some countries are at higher level, other countries just at the beginning of this. But today, actually, technology is not the main issue of development of e-governance. It's more the way to do the job. It's not a big problem, actually, in technology, or deserts, or mountains, or whatever, but just to do the job in more efficient way and with the modern technology. But my question is actually that if there are some exceptionally good solutions in different countries, are you, distinguished guests, are willing to take over these best solutions maybe in different countries to your countries? Thank you.
Thank you.
To whom is the question?
To everybody, I think.
You can start.
Okay, we agree with you. The problem is not the technology. It's not a technology problem. We are focused in the citizen. So we have a strategy. For example, we duplicate the budget this year, like around $55 million per year. So we're going to spend like 2020 in these 4 years to make a strategy to learn how to communicate the program, and also our like how to empowerment the citizens in this program. So right now we're looking, for example, good examples in other countries, how they communicate e-government solutions, and we're implementing that phase of the program. We are focused in citizens.
Mm-hmm. Any others? Okay. So I made a mistake, which was that after telling you all to tweet, I didn't check my Twitter feed. And I actually have several questions on Twitter. We are out of time. So I'm just going to take one question and ask each of the candidates, each of the delegates, yes, there's a competition afterwards. I'm going to ask each of the delegates to answer this question in a maximum of 4 words. This question is from Teemu Ropponen, and the question is, what is the single biggest obstacle to e-government implementation in your country? 4 words, starting with Colombia.
The rotation of the public servants, for example.
Say that again.
The rotation of the public servants, That, for example, we capacitate persons and then they go away. So, first of all, and
that was already 4 words. Pantelis Tzortzakis.
Yeah, it's e-government brings transparency, and there are people that they don't like the transparency. So I think the major problem is for the people that they have used to work without transparency inside the government.
Okay. People unused to transparency. There we go, 4 words. Aleš Dobnikar.
Oh, actually, changes of the work processes of the officials.
Changes in work processes. Okay. Yes? Ruslan Gattarov.
Да, наверное, чиновники, которые не хотят и не понимают, зачем им это надо, и опасаются этого.
Okay. And that's similar to what has been said so far. Mashhour, Abudaka.
Well, you know it. You will ask me about this.
What did I ask you about this?
Well, you should know it. What's the biggest obstacle?
That's one word.
Yes, one word. Occupation, of course.
Thank you. And Juhan Parts?
I don't see any obstacles.
The best answer. I would like to thank our ministerial panel very much. Maria Carolina Hoyos, Pantelis Tzortzakis, Aleš Dobnikar, Ruslan Gattarov, Mashhour Abudaka, Juhan Parts. Громче.
Хэштег есть? Хэштег есть?
Хэштег?
Хэштег в Твиттере есть нашей конференции?
Хэштег. Sorry, hashtag. ICEGOV.
Есть, да?
Есть.
Ну, он, мне кажется, должен на всех раздаточных материалах тогда быть, если мы хотим, чтобы все мы были в Твиттере.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for participating.